There, what's up, everybody? It's Dr. Shazetta. I pray you guys are doing well. Happy Friday to you, man. It is Friday, August the 7th, 2026. Again, I am blown away by how quickly the year has passed us by or is passing us by. It's a beautiful day here in Washington, D.C. I spent the majority of my morning sitting outside. It's like the perfect temperature. There's a smooth breeze that's blowing. And so I spent my time out this morning reading and taking some notes from my reading and drinking my coffee, which in and of itself is pretty amazing. Perhaps I'll do another video about why that's so amazing at a later time. But for now, I wanted to come on because if you watched yesterday's video, you know that I'm on day 2 of my 10-day reset challenge. But first, if you're new here, I'm Dr. Shazetta, and this is Dr. Shazetta's The Well Life, the place where inspiration, creativity, and intellect collide. That's right, my little corner of the internet where I lean fully and intentionally into the fullness of who I am. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, you know I'm glad you're back. But listen, yesterday I talked about how my husband and my son are traveling for about 10 days, and this is the first time that I've been by myself for any period of time since my dad passed away. And if I'm honest, I was a little nervous about being alone for this long. My dogs are here, but still just kind of felt a little weird about it. And so I decided that instead of letting sadness and loneliness settle in, that I would be intentional about how I used and planned this time over the next 10 or so days. And so I decided to put myself on a bit of a reset challenge. Not anything huge because nothing's wrong, but taking the time to kind of refine some of my daily rhythms and to define or refine some of my daily practices, particularly in 3 areas, right? 3 specific categories. 1, around attention. How am I using my time? How am I allowing my attention to be monopolized by doom scrolling or by just watching YouTube or by doing nothing? Or how am I being distracted when I'm setting my mind or my attention toward a thing? How easily am I being distracted? And what are those things that are distracting me? And then thirdly, my body. Well, not thirdly, secondly, my body, right? What am I putting into my body? How am I moving my body? How am I using my body? What are my sleep rhythms? How am I honoring my sleep rhythms and my need to be on a sleep rhythm, particularly as the school year begins to start or is coming up, right? It's about to begin very soon. And then the third one is around my own creative rhythm. So I shared yesterday that I have struggled in creative inspiration a lot over the last couple of years. And it's been something that's been missing for me because creativity is such a huge part of who I am. And so looking at how I can be more intentional about carving out space and making time as a part of a daily rhythm, as opposed to just making time for it when I can make time for it. And so this is day 2. This is day 2 of that. And so I wanted to just hop on today to talk for a few seconds because I said to you all that as a part of this 10-day reset, I was going to post a video every day. So I want to talk a little bit about today this notion of kind of slow and intentional living. I think that sometimes slow and intentional living gets a bad rap, right? That people think, oh, you guys are people that just don't want to work, or oh, you guys are people who are being lazy, who want to avoid responsibility. You're people who are trying to escape, real life and all the adulting things. And well, I ain't mad about escaping adulting sometimes, but that's not the aim, right? Slow living is not, and intentional living is not simply looking at this notion of productivity, right? So last year and the year prior, and certainly post-COVID, there's been this heavy focus on productivity. And if you grew up in the time that I grew up, right, I'm an 80s baby, so 90s and early 2000s, like one of the strongest selling points that they encouraged us to have and to build out on our resume as young professionals or aspiring professionals was this idea that we could multitask, right? That you need to develop the ability to multitask. Well, what has turned out, I think that I have realized, and I think that more people are realizing, is that this notion of multitasking is unhealthy. It is toxic in and of itself. And cultures that focus on just productivity, that focus on outcomes, right? We've seen the kind of, I won't say demise, but the dumbing down of education, even in our school systems, because everything is now outcomes based. It doesn't matter if you actually understand the material, but if you can memorize the material to test, then our outcomes, our numbers are higher, right? And this carries over into the workplace and it carries over into our daily lives, that we begin to value ourselves by how much we are able to produce in a given environment or in a given amount of time, right? And so slow and intentional living doesn't focus on how much I can get done, right? But it asks a different kind of question when you get up in the morning. What deserves my attention today? And I'm going to tell you, for a busybody, not nosy, but a person who has for years prided herself in the things that she is able to do and the things that she is able to produce, the ways in which she's able to help others. This idea that I am not getting up measuring myself by what is done or by how much is done or how quickly it is done, but instead measuring the value of a day, measuring the success of a day by how I carefully curated with great intention, right? What was to get my attention that day. And so that is one thing that I have to remind myself of daily. And that's especially been the case as I've navigated through mental health, is not getting up assuming that I have the capacity every single day to go down this really unrealistic and monstrous task and checklist, but instead getting up and checking in with myself, getting up and saying, here's how much capacity I have today. Now, what deserves my time and what deserves my attention? And so that has given way to a number of things, right? Beginning to ask myself that question gives way to a number of things. So yesterday, I knew that I was kind of delicate because the guys left yesterday. And so I knew I wanted to start the challenge, but it was like, what do I need even for this challenge to be easy for me to do, to be easier for me to do? What do I need? For me, I needed an orderly environment. And so what deserved my attention yesterday was me taking the time to clean the house, to get some organization done. What deserved my attention was making sure that I ate well and that I hydrated well, right? And when I finished those things, as I did those things, it was enough. I was in a peaceful place. It was enough. And I was able to say, I've done well today. And so I think that was a big thing, but it gives way to instead looking at my phone, getting up in the morning and immediately picking up my phone and scrolling through, taking in a lot of information, but not a lot of information that deserves my attention, right? And so instead, hopping out of the bed, coming down and warming up my coffee, and then heading out on the porch to read and to take in things that deserve my attention, to take in information that is actually not just holding space, but is somehow feeding my mind and my spirit and my soul, right? Creating instead of consuming. This is huge. This is huge. When we talk about consumerism, oftentimes we're talking about, it in a capitalist sort of way, right? How are we spending money? We're consuming, we're spending money, and we're consuming things, we're buying things, many things that are trendy, all those things. But when I'm talking about consuming, it is the amount of other people's creations that I consume, right? Whether that be, again, through YouTube or through social media scrolling or any of those things. And all those things are great. They are ways to decompress. They are ways to learn. They are ways to develop, right, your skill sets. There's this big thing about developing personal curriculum that's happening right now. But at the same time, I realize that there are periods of time where I get to a place where I am consuming far more than I am creating. And then I get to a place where I can neither consume or create because I've consumed way too much and not put anything out. And so this has given way to my trying new things. I picked up some bulky yarn at Michael's a couple of days ago when I was there, toward the end of learning how to crochet the big fuzzy, not crochet, to knit the big fuzzy, like bulky, chunky blankets. And so I'm experimenting with that. I did that for a while yesterday, tried two methods, didn't like it. And so learned a different method today that I'm going to try as we lean into the afternoon. Even in terms of what I'm cooking and what I'm eating, no more, I won't say no more, but going less through, the drive-through and saying, we got McDonald's at home. But more than that, when I am ordering out, saying, but let me make sure it's at least high quality food. If I'm going to pay for it, let me make sure it's actually something that my body is not going to out and out reject, right? And so it's not about doing less, right? Slow living, intentional living, and even this season of my life is not about doing less, but it's about curating what I do. It's about living with more intention. It's about slowing down to honor my body, my spirit, my soul, my mind, and what I need. And it is an imperfect process. I'll be clear about that. This season of honoring what I need has probably been one of the most difficult ever. And there are learning curves, right? There's trial and error. And so this 10 days here without anyone else in the house other than the dogs. I'm able to kind of try and err, if you will, without it'd be a relatively low stakes. It's not negatively affecting, right, anybody else in the household. So I'm curious, right? These 10 days of videos aren't going to be super long. They are just kind of me video journaling through this and bringing you all along for the journey. But I'm curious if there are areas in your life where you have mistaken your busyness for intentionality, right? I think that's the question. Where are the areas in your life where you have mistaken busyness for intentionality, where you have stressed out over getting a thing done and then finished that thing and having felt no fulfillment, no sense of accomplishment, no joy around it, no anything, because you are performing rather than moving purposefully? And in this season and at this big old age of finna be 42, I really do want to move purposefully, right? Not just productively. I want to produce, but I'm not interested in being productive for the sake of being productive. I want to move purposefully. And a lot of that requires healing. It requires reflection. It requires trial and error. It requires lots of prayer. It requires, spending time in meditation. It requires all of those things. But I feel like and believe that I've come too far over the last couple of years in this work, an imperfect journey again, come too far in this work to stop and turn around and go backwards. So I'm going to keep plowing forward, right? Taking every opportunity like I can in this to refine and to curate and to be intentional, because I believe that this sense of intentional and slow living really is the will of God for my life. But I know that there's a lot of unlearning, right? And deprogramming that I have to do in order to get there. So I'm going to hop off, right? In a few seconds here. And I want to leave you with the thought that perhaps, right, the opposite of hurrying isn't just slowness, right? It's not just slowing down. It is being intentional and being careful with how you handle yourself. I always say to people, you can't just let folks handle you any kind of way. And here I am, been handling myself recklessly for years. So anyway, day 2 of the 10-day reset challenge. If you want to come along for the journey, if this has interested you at all, I hope you hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you're notified whenever I upload new content. And well, tomorrow is day 3, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you all tomorrow as I continue this process. Tomorrow I'm gonna tell you about my sleep experience last night, and we'll see what happens tonight. But tomorrow, I want to try to remember to share with you all last night's sleep experience. So anyway, I'll talk to y'all soon. I love y'all big, man. I appreciate you being here, and I'll get at you later. Bye.